Gamelan Gong Cycle is a style or genre of Balinese gamelan music. Kebyar means the process of flowering, and refers to the explosive changes in tempo and dynamics characteristic of the style. It is the most popular form of gamelan in Bali, and its best-known musical export.Gong Cycle music is based on a 5-tone scale called pelog selisir, and is characterized by brilliant sounds, syncopations, sudden and gradual changes in sound, color, dynamics, tempo and articulation, and complex, complementary, interlocking, melodic and rhythmic patterns called kotekan. History. Gamelan Gong Cycle was first documented to exist in North Bali in the early 1900s. The first public performance was in December 1915 at a Gamelan Gong competition in Jagarta, North Bali. 10 years later, Mario of Tabanan is said to have created Kebyar dance to accompany the music. Following the violent invasion of the island, Dutch occupiers responded to international criticism by building cultural institutions. They sponsored these competitions until Japanese forces ended the rule in World War II. Religious and cultural significance. In addition to island-wide arts competitions, Gamelan Gong Cycle has become an essential part of modern Bali Hindu ceremonies. They are required for annual birthday ceremonies for temples, Odalan, as well as major holidays as accompaniment for sacred dances. They are also appropriate for the class of rituals centered around human life, putra manusha, such as weddings. Instruments in Gamelan Gong Cycle offer a wide range of pitches and timbres, ranging 5 octaves from the deepest gongs to the highest key on a gangso. The high end can be described as piercing, the low end booming and sustained, while the drums as crisp. Kebyar instruments are most often grouped in pairs, or gendered. Each pair consists of a male and female instrument, the female being slightly larger and slightly lower in pitch. See tuning in this article to learn why this is. Keyed instruments. Most instruments in Kebyar are keyed metallophones, with bronze keys resting on suspended cords over bamboo resonators. The instruments often have ornately carved wooden frames. The Gongs section in Gamelan Gong Cycle is the largest section, consisting of 14 players. Gongs instruments are played with a mallet, called a pongal gangsa. The mallet differs in hardness depending on the instrument and its range. The keys are arranged from low to high, left to right. The key is struck with the hammer in one hand, and dampened with the finger and second knuckle of the other hand. The keys can be played in one of 3 ways: strike the key, and let resonate until sound fades; strike the key, and dampen immediately prior to, or simultaneous with, the striking of the next note in the melody. This is especially good for interlocking parts. Strike while dampening. This gets a dry, pitched click. The gangsa instruments play elaborate ornamentations on the underlying melody of a piece of music. The explosive feeling of the Gong Cycle style derives mainly from the dynamic range of these instruments, whose bright, sharp tones can sound anywhere from soft and sweet to extremely loud and aggressive. Each gendered male-female pair of gangsa is also divided into 2 interlocking melodic parts, polos and the sangsi during kotekan, which permits extremely rapid, virtuosic, and complex patterns to be played. Gangsa cantilan. There are 4 cantilan in Kebyar, 2 male and 2 female. See gendered instruments within this article. These instruments are the highest sounding in the Kebyar ensemble, with its highest note being around C7. It has 10 keys, and a range of 2 octaves, and is played with a wooden hammer. Players often sit on the floor to play this instrument. Gangsa Pemide. There are also 4 Pemide in Kebyar, 2 male and 2 female. These instruments also have 10 keys, a range of 2 octaves, and are played with a wooden mallet, but are exactly 1 octave lower than Gamelan. Players often sit on the floor to play this instrument. Ugal. There is often only 1 ugal in the Kebyar ensemble, and it is usually female. It is played by one of the leaders of the ensemble. A second male ugal is sometimes used. The ugal is taller than the other gangsa, and the player sits on a short stool, so as to allow the player to cue the ensemble visually with ease. The instrument also has 15 keys, with a range of 2 octaves, and is played with a hard wooden mallet, slightly larger than the other gangsa pangals, and usually with additional ornamentation, so the leaders sometimes theatrical cues actively catch the light. Its notes are an octave lower than those of the gangsa pemide. The ugals play a combination of gangsa parts and cues, melodic solos, and the underlying melody with flourishes. The first, front ugal, cues and plays elements of the polo's interlocking gangsa part, and if there is a second ugal, it plays elements of the sangsi part. Jagogan. There are 2 jagogan in Kebyar, 1 male and 1 female. These instruments have a range of 1 octave, and are 1 octave below kalung. The keys are considerably larger than those of other gangsa, and are played with a large cloth-coated, rubber-padded spherical mallet. The jagogan plays the deepest tuned notes in the ensemble, typically playing key notes in the underlying melody of a piece of music instead of every note of that melody. Jublaga kalung. The next higher pitch of the gangsa is the jublaga kalung. This instrument, like jagog, also requires long resonating bamboo tubes, so is often played while sitting on a small stool, and consists of 1 female-male pair. These instruments have a range of 1 octave in between pemide and ugal. Some have 5 keys, but 7-key jublag are also commonly found in Bali. It usually plays at submultiples of the pokok. The keys are struck more frequently than the jagogan and usually less frequently than the ugal. The kalung part is often the full pokok, while the ugal part includes some ornamentations and flourishes. However, the kalung do not play full Kebyar sequences. For example, this instrument is 1 octave above the jagogan and overlaps tones with the ugal. Vertically suspended gong family. Gongs come in different sizes, and provide a structure for phrasing for the music by repeating a 4 or 8-beat pattern. This pattern is called the Gong Cycle. Gongs are mounted vertically. Gong gede, also referred to as just gong. Gong gede is the deepest and most resonant. Ged, sometimes written gde, means big in Balinese. Because it is the largest of the gongs, it is considered to be the most sacred instrument in Kebyar. It is never dampened, always allowed to decay. Because of its deep tone, it penetrates through the ensemble and can be heard for miles. It is struck with a large padded mallet. Kempur, a medium-sized gong. The kempur is very similar to gong gede as it has very similar qualities, but is just higher in pitch. It is struck with a large padded mallet. Klentong, also known as the kemong. This is much smaller and higher in pitch than the kempur. It is struck with a harder mallet than either the gong gede or kempur, which allows it to have a sharper attack. Kettle gong family. Kettle gongs are round, bronze, and pitched. They are often mounted horizontally on suspended cords as part of a frame. Positioned this way, there is an opening on the bottom, slightly beveled bow on top, and a protruding center called the boss. The kettles are arranged from low to high, left to right. They are generally played with a wooden mallet wrapped in string on one end of the end of the mallet, which is bare, finished wood. Mallets are held one in each hand as extensions of pointed index fingers. There are 4 conventional strikes, on the boss with the stringed part of the mallet, and immediately released to let it vibrate freely, on the boss with the stringed part of the mallet but pressed to dampen any vibration, on the bow of the kettle with the wood tip of the mallet, and allowed to ring freely, on the bow of the kettle with the wood tip of the mallet, but pressed to dampen any ringing. Frame-mounted horizontal kettle gongs, ryong, also spelled ryong. This instrument consists of 12 kettles mounted horizontally in a row on a frame. It is played by 4 musicians, each taking responsibility for 2 to 4 of its kettles. The players, who sit in a row, are split into 2 groups, the first consisting of the first and third players in the row, and the second consisting of the second and fourth players. Both people in the same group play the same part, but doubled an octave apart. The parts of Group 1 and of Group 2, when played together, are interlocking. The ryong has both melodic and non-melodic percussive roles. Trompong. The trompong is not usually used in Kebyar, as it is associated with older genres such as Gamelan, Gong, Gde. When it is used, however, it is positioned in front of the ensemble, facing the audience. Constructed similarly to ryong, it consists of 10 kettles, with a range of 2 octaves. It is played by only one person, and a person may be a leader of the ensemble who sits on a short stool, playing the main melodic line. The trompong is also played by a dancer in dance pieces such as Kebyar trompong and Kebyar duda. Because of the size of the instrument, the melodies are composed to allow one to slowly shift one's position to reach the extremes of its range. Individual horizontal hand-held kettle gongs. Tawa. The tawa is a small kettle held in the lap or arm and struck on the boss by a mallet with a soft round head. It plays the beats of the Gong Cycle and acts somewhat like a metronome. Kemplian. The Kemplian are small kettles set over chords strung on a box-like stand. They are mainly used as tempo-keeping instruments. They are usually played with a chord-wrapped stick like those of the ryong and trompong. The kettle is struck on the boss while dampened with the other hand to produce a sharper, drier sound. Kelenang, also written klinang. It is a very small kettle, about 5 inches in diameter, either set on its own stand or held in the hands. It, too, is played with a chord-wrapped stick. It plays every second beat of the tempo, usually alternating with the Kemplia tawa. Kaya. The kaya is a small kettle with a recessed boss, held on the lap and played with a hard stick. The kaya plays accents to important parts of the rhythm. Primary rhythm instruments. Kendang. The kendang is a double-headed drum of jackfruit wood and cowhide. The exterior is shaped like a truncated cone, while the negative space of the interior is sculpted like an hourglass. This shape and the cinching action of hide straps creates 2 distinct, approximate tunings in one drum. Like most gamelan instruments, kendang are paired, the larger lead part female, wadden, and the other male, lanang. The surfaces inside the kendang wadden are carved straighter than those in the lanang, resulting in a more resonant, booming timbre, much like the syllables for pitches used for pitched instruments. Kendang have a set of onomatopoetic spoken syllables for each stroke, producing a total of 14 types of sound. Kendang are played with either bare hands only or bare hands plus one mallet. The kendang wadden player typically tops the hierarchy of the ensemble, setting tempi and orally cueing transitions like a conductor. The kendang part is the most complex in Gong Cycle, drawing from a rich lexicon of rapid-fire, syncopated patterns to fit the mood and progression of pitched music. The Lanang drummer is responsible for filling in an appropriate interlocking part. Kendang players may sit facing the same way, Wadden in front and Lanang behind. Ceng pronounced TNTN. This instrument consists of several small, overlapping cymbals tied to a frame. The frame is often carved to look like an animal, most commonly a turtle, as a mythic turtle is said to carry the island of Bali on its back. The player holds a pair of matching cymbals with bamboo or textile handles, striking the stationary cymbals in quick, even succession or in asymmetrical accents with kendang or ryong. Soft melody instruments. Suling, one of the two instruments able to bend pitch. The suling is a vertical bamboo flute. Suling come in a variety of sizes, from a piccolo-like an LT 1 foot to a breathy 5 feet. The suling section doubles and ornaments the melody. The highest register suling has the freest rein to improvise. The player circular breathes to allow the pitch to be sustained into a constant tone. A peculiar quality of Balinese suling, distinct from Sundanese suling, is a combined vibrato from a irregular flexing of the jaw and working of the tongue. Suling have retained the complete septatonic tuning of court gamelan and can access tones in the pitch gaps of keyed instruments for effect. Rebab. The rebab is a spike fiddle played with a bow. It is only sometimes used in Kebyar as it is often drowned out by the metallophones. Its melodic line is similar to the suling, sometimes reaching pitches on a septatonic scale. It has only two strings tuned a western fourth apart which never touch the unfretted fingerboard. This allows the player to change notes by pressing down on the string, bending the string sideways, sliding, or changing strings. Unlike a western string bow, the bow of the rebab is deeper and held underhand like that of a viola da gamba. The player's thumb applies pressure directly on the hairs to control tension. Tuning and gender. There is no standard pitch in any Balinese music. Generally speaking, all instruments in a gamelan Gong Cycle ensemble are made and tuned at the same time. Each ensemble is tuned to itself, making it nearly impossible to remove an instrument from one ensemble to use it in another and have it match pitch. In any ensemble, however, instruments are gendered, and their individual tuning depends on that instrument's gender. Almost every instrument in a Kebyar ensemble is paired with a male and female counterpart. Each instrument in a pair is tuned differently from its counterpart, one higher and one lower, played at the same time. The higher instrument and the lower instrument produce a beating effect by sympathetic resonance, creating an overall shimmering, pulsating quality. The female instrument is tuned lower, while the male instrument is tuned higher. For example, one note on a female gangsa pemade might be tuned to 220 Hz, while the male gangsa pemade might be tuned slightly higher to 228 Hz. Some Kebyar ensembles are tuned so that the Numban ensemble is tuned so that the beats are significantly faster for higher frequencies, with the lowest jegog notes nearly a quarter tone apart. A gendered pair of gangsa will play interlocking kotekan melodies, such that in each pair one interlocking part is on the female and the other on the male instrument. The second pair of that instrument uses the opposite arrangement, so that there is one instrument of each gender playing each part. Female polos, male sangsi, female sangsi, and male polos, for full balance. Kebyar music. Kebyar, its namesake, refers to the explosive, predominantly unmetered section marking the introduction and some transitions of Kebyar compositions. The compositional style derives from Kebyar Legong of Buleleng, North Bali, characterized by long, maximum volume notes simultaneously struck by the whole ensemble, freely ringing glissandi, dramatic tempo changes, and rhythmic triplets. Tabu Krisi Baru are the primary type of instrumental music in Gamelan Gong Cycle, characterized by a succession of passages featuring each instrumental group. They were rhapsodic and loosely constructed at the beginning of the 20th century but became increasingly standardized. Gong Cycle. The music is divided into 4 beat groups. This whole rhythmic cycle is called the Gongan. The Gongs divide Gongan into sections. Gong-a-jeng. The largest gong marks the end of Gongan. The smaller gongs mark the 4th or 8th beat, and the smallest gongs outline the pulse.